Please feed me, I'll do anything." The words tore from Ella Bennett's throat like winter wind through cracked stone. She collapsed against the cabin door, fists raw from pounding weathered wood. Lightning split the Sierra Nevada darkness. Rain hammered the mountain like bullets on tin. Her dress clung to bone-thin shoulders, water streaming from hair that had escaped its careful braid 3 days ago. The door opened. Warm light spilled across her face. A man stood in the threshold, tall as the pines surrounding his cabin, beard touched with early gray, eyes the color of river stones, studying her with the patience of someone who had learned to read danger in shadows. "Will you marry me?" The question hung between them. Thunder rolled across the peaks like distant cannon fire. Ella Mee's knees buckled. Her vision blurred at the edges, hunger and cold finally claiming what little strength remained. The man caught her before she hit the ground. His hands were careful, calloused from years of mountain living but gentle as he lifted her inside. The cabin smelled of pine smoke and coffee. A fire crackled in the stone hearth. Venison simmered in a black pot. She had not seen such warmth in weeks. He set her in a chair near the flames, wrapped a wool blanket around her shoulders without speaking, ladled stew into a wooden bowl, placed it before her with cornbread still warm from the oven. Ella ate like someone who had forgotten the taste of hope. The meat was tender, the broth rich with herbs she could not name. Each spoonful brought feeling back to fingers that had gone numb with more than cold. The man watched from across the small room. He carved something from a piece of pine, shavings curling at his feet like prayers. His movements held the steady rhythm of someone who had made peace with solitude. "Name's Abner Stone," he said finally. She looked up from the empty bowl. "Ella Bennett." He nodded as if her name explained everything. As if desperate women appeared at his door every winter night with stories carved into their faces. "That proposal." Her voice came stronger now. "You serious?" Abner set down his knife. The carved figure was taking shape. A bird with wings spread wide, serious as mountain stone. "You don't know me." "Know enough." He gestured toward the storm raging beyond his walls. "Know you walked through that to get here. Know you got nowhere else to go." The words stung because they carried truth. Ella pulled the blanket tighter. 3 weeks she had been running. 3 weeks since she fled Colonel Whitmore's estate with gold sewn into her dress and freedom papers that would not survive close inspection. "Why?" she asked. Abner resumed his carving, each cut deliberate, measured. "Government says I need a wife to keep this land claim. Been here 5 years. Built this cabin with my own hands, cleared the timber. Found silver in the creek bed." He paused, looked toward the shuttered window. "They want family men, settled folk, not hermits who talk to mountains." Lightning illuminated the cabin in stark white. For a moment Ella saw him clearly, saw the loneliness carved into the lines around his eyes, the careful distance he kept from human connection. She understood that distance, had learned it in different circumstances but learned it well. "What kind of marriage?" she asked. "The kind that keeps you fed, keeps me on my land." His hands never stopped moving. The wooden bird grew more detailed with each stroke. "Nothing more unless you choose it." The fire popped. Sparks danced up the chimney like small souls seeking heaven. Ella studied this stranger who offered sanctuary wrapped in a proposal. His cabin was neat. Tools hung in their proper places. Books lined a shelf near the window. Not the home of a man who would harm what he protected, but marriage. The word tasted of chains even when spoken gently. "I got complications," she said. "We all do." Thunder shook the cabin walls. The storm showed no signs of breaking. Outside lay wilderness that would kill her before dawn. Behind lay men who would hang her if they caught her trail. Between those fates sat Abner Stone, carving birds from pine, offering marriage to a stranger because loneliness had its own kind of hunger. "All right," she whispered. He looked up from his work. Something shifted in those river-stone eyes, surprise perhaps, or relief. "All right, I'll marry you." The words fell into silence broken only by rain against the roof. Abner set down his knife. rose from his chair with the careful movements of a man who had learned not to startle wounded things. He extended his hand, not for her to shake but simply to bridge the space between them. Elami hesitated, then placed her palm against his. His skin was warm, steady as bedrock. "We'll ride to town when the storm breaks," he said. "Find us a preacher." She nodded. Outside, the wind howled like something lost between worlds. But inside the cabin, beside the fire, wrapped in wool that smelled of sage and safety, Elami Bennett felt the first stirring of something she had almost forgotten. Hope. The storm broke before dawn. Elami woke to silence so complete it rang in her ears. Sunlight streamed through cabin windows, painting the wooden floor gold. Abner stood at the stove, coffee steaming in 2 tin cups. He had given her his bed, slept in the chair by the dying fire. His back would ache from it, but he offered no complaint. "Town's a half-day ride," he said, handing her the coffee. "We'll need witnesses." She wrapped her fingers around the warm metal. The coffee was strong, black as mountain soil. "What will you tell them about me?" "Truth, you're my wife." The word sat strange between them. Wife. Neither had spoken of love. Neither had promised more than shelter and survival. They rode out under a sky scrubbed clean by rain. Abner's horse was a sturdy bay gelding that picked its way down the mountain trail with sure feet. Elami rode a gentle mare he kept for supply runs. She had not told him she knew horses, had not mentioned the years spent caring for Colonel Whitmore's stable. Some truths could wait. The town of Cedar Falls hugged the valley floor. Wooden buildings lined a single muddy street. A church steeple pointed toward heaven. Smoke rose from chimneys in thin gray lines. People stared as they passed. A mountain man and a woman of color riding together drew looks sharp as winter wind. Elami felt their eyes, felt the judgment brewing behind careful faces. Abner seemed carved from stone. If he noticed the stares, he gave no sign. The preacher was a thin man with soft hands and nervous eyes. Reverend Polk. He glanced between them with the expression of someone asked to bless unholy ground. "This is irregular," he said. "Marriage ain't irregular," Abner replied. His voice carried the weight of mountains. "Got my claim papers. Got witnesses." The witnesses were whoever happened to be in the general store. A shopkeeper named Mills, his wife, an old prospector with silver in his beard. They watched the ceremony with faces that revealed nothing. "Do you, Abner Stone, take this woman?" The words blurred together, legal sounds that meant survival. Elami spoke her vows to the wooden floor. Abner's voice never wavered. The ring was carved from pine, the same wood as the bird he had been carving the night before. It fit her finger perfectly. "You may kiss the bride." They looked at each other across a silence that stretched wide as the valley. Then Abner leaned forward, pressed his lips to her forehead, gentle as blessing. The ride back passed in quiet. The mountain trail climbed toward peaks that touched the sky. Elami's new ring caught sunlight, threw tiny rainbows across her palm. "Separate rooms," Abner said when they reached the cabin. "You take the bed. I'll build a lean-to off the back wall." She wanted to argue, to say she could sleep anywhere after weeks on the ground, but the offer held dignity, respect for boundaries neither had defined. "Thank you." He began work that same afternoon, cut timber with an axe that sang through mountain air, each swing measured, precise. The lean-to took shape with the same care he brought to everything. Elami explored the cabin while he worked, found medical supplies in a wooden crate, bandages, laudanum, tools for digging bullets from flesh, the collection of a man who had seen violence. Books filled a shelf by the window, military histories, poetry, a worn Bible with passages marked in careful script. She read the marked verses, all spoke of redemption, of finding peace after war. "You read," she turned. Abner stood in the doorway, sweat darkening his shirt. Wood shavings clung to his beard. "Some," she said, "more than some." He nodded toward the medical supplies. "Know anything about doctoring?" "Enough to help." The answer satisfied him. He returned to his building. She returned to her exploration. Dinner was venison and wild greens. They ate by lamplight as darkness claimed the mountain. The silence between them had grown comfortable, two people sharing space without demanding more. "Why here?" she asked. "Why this mountain?" Abner looked toward the shuttered window, as if he could see through wood to the peaks beyond. Seemed far enough. From what? He was quiet so long she thought he would not answer. Then he spoke to the flames dancing in the fireplace. "From who I used to be." The words carried weight, pain worn smooth by years of silence. Elami understood that weight, carried her own version of it. The law ever come looking? Not yet. Yet. The word hung between them heavy with possibility. Both carried secrets that could bring riders up the mountain trail. Both had chosen this isolation for reasons that ran deeper than loneliness. A week passed, then another. They settled into rhythm. Abner hunted, tended his small silver claim in the creek. Elami cooked, mended clothes, read his books while he worked. She learned his habits, coffee before dawn, always facing the trail when he sat outside, sleep that came light and broke at the smallest sound. He learned hers, the way she touched her dress pocket where something valuable hid, how she never sat with her back to the door, the careful way she watched the horizon. Neither spoke of what they were watching for. The linta was finished by the month's end. A small room with its own entrance. Private. Warm. Abner moved his few belongings with the careful efficiency of a man accustomed to traveling light. That night they sat by the fire as had become custom. Elami mended a tear in his shirt. Abner carved another bird from pine, this one smaller, more delicate. "Saw riders today," he said without looking up from his work. Her needle stopped moving. "Where?" "Valley Road, 3 men. Asking questions in town." The shirt grew heavy in her hands. "What kind of questions?" "The kind that bring trouble." They both stared into the fire. Flames danced across logs that would burn to ash by morning. Everything could change that quickly. Safety could crumble in the time it took wood to become ember. "We should talk," she said. "Yes." But neither spoke. Some conversations required more courage than marriage vows, required trust that ran deeper than survival. Outside, wind moved through the pines, carried the scent of approaching winter, of changes that could not be stopped. The wooden bird took final shape under Abner's knife. Wings spread wide, ready for flight. The conversation came 3 days later, not in words but in the quiet way Abner handed her his rifle while he split wood, trust measured in steel and gunpowder. Elami felt the weapon's weight, familiar. Her fingers found the trigger guard without thought. Muscle memory from lessons Colonel Whitmore never knew she received. Abner's axe paused mid-swing. He watched her check the barrel, test the action, handle the gun with respect born of knowledge. "You shoot before?" "Some." The axe resumed its rhythm, would split clean, fell in neat piles for the coming winter. No more questions asked. Trust was a door that opened both ways. October painted the mountainside in fire colors. Red maples burned bright against evergreen. Aspen leaves danced gold in morning light. The world prepared for sleep under winter's blanket. They worked together gathering supplies, preserving meat, stacking firewood against the cabin walls until they resembled fortress battlements. Each day brought them closer to isolation, to months when the mountain would be theirs alone. The intimacy grew slowly, careful as plants reaching toward spring sun. Abner showed her his mining claim, a narrow creek where silver glinted in shallow pools. He worked the water with pan and patience, separated precious metal from worthless stone grain by grain. "Enough here to last," he said. "Not enough to make me rich." Rich. The word tasted bitter in Elami's mouth. She touched her dress pocket where Colonel Whitmore's gold lay hidden, wealth stolen from a man who had stolen everything else. "Rich ain't always measured in metal," she said. Abner looked up from his pan. Water dripped from his hands back to the creek. Something passed between them, understanding perhaps, or recognition of shared wounds. That evening she helped him wash dishes. Their hands brushed reaching for the same plate. Neither pulled away. The touch lingered, warm as the water, gentle as rainfall. "Tell me about the riders," she said. Abner dried his hands on rough cloth, stared toward the window where darkness pressed against glass. Deputy Marshal, two others, showed a drawing in town. Her heart became winter stone. Drawing of who? Woman, your age, your coloring. The plate slipped from Elamee's fingers, shattered against the wooden floor in pieces sharp as accusations. She knelt to gather the fragments, cut her thumb on broken pottery. Blood welled bright red, dropped to the floor in small perfect circles. Abner knelt beside her, took her injured hand in both of his, pressed cloth against the wound until bleeding stopped. They also showed another picture, he said quietly. She looked up from their joined hands, saw knowledge in his river-stone eyes. Man in uniform, buffalo soldier, sergeant's stripes. The cabin walls seemed to close around them. Two people with secrets finally dragged into lamplight. Elamee pulled her hand free, stood with careful dignity. You know some. Not all. She walked to the fireplace. Flames threw dancing shadows across log walls. Her shadow moved with them, restless as trapped birds. Colonel Thaddeus Whitmore, she said to the fire, commanded a Negro regiment out of Fort Davis. Good Christian man according to his reputation. The logs crackled, sap boiled in the heat, made sounds urgent as whispered prayers. Reputation, Abner repeated. His voice carried weight, recognition. Elamee turned, faced this man who had become her husband through desperation and circumstance. You served under him. Not a question. Statement flat as hammered metal. Abner nodded, rose from where he knelt among broken pottery. His movements held the careful control of someone managing old pain. Sergeant Abel Stone, 3rd Cavalry, Buffalo Soldiers. The words came slow, carved from silence that had protected them for years. Served until I couldn't any more. She studied his face, saw the soldier beneath the mountain man, the uniform ghost that lived in his straight spine, his careful alertness. What happened? Orders. He moved to the mantelpiece, picked up the wooden bird he had carved that first night, turned it in his hands without seeing. Orders that turned men into monsters. The fire settled lower, cast longer shadows. Outside, wind moved through the pines with sounds of distant mourning. Apache village, Abner continued. Women, children, old men. Whitmore said they were harboring raiders. His hands stilled on the carving. They weren't. Elamee closed her eyes, saw blood that was not her own, heard screams that belonged to other throats. Some wounds lived in memory, festered there until they poisoned everything. You tried to stop it. Tried. Failed. He set the bird back on the mantel. Its wooden wings would never carry it away from this conversation. Took a bullet trying. Whitmore left me for dead. But you lived. Lived, healed. Walked away from everything I used to be. The admission hung between them heavy as storm clouds. Two people who had fled the same devil, found each other in the wilderness by accident or providence. He killed my baby brother, Elamee said. The words came without permission, torn from places she kept locked. Tommy, 13 years old, caught him learning to read from my books. Her voice remained steady, emotion buried under years of survival. Said reading made slaves dangerous, made them think they were people. Abner's hands became fists, relaxed with visible effort. Where? His plantation outside San Antonio. I was his cook. House servant. Tommy worked the stables. She touched her dress pocket, felt the weight of stolen gold. Been planning to leave for months. Tommy's death just decided when. The fire burned lower. Shadows grew longer. Truth had its own gravity, changed the shape of everything around it. The gold, Abner said. His strongbox, payment for my brother's life. The freedom papers. Forged, good enough to fool most folks. Not good enough for federal marshals. They stood in silence. Two fugitives who had accidentally found sanctuary in each other. The mountain pressed close around them, offered protection that might not last until spring. What do we do? She asked. Abner looked toward the shuttered window. Beyond lay wilderness that could hide them or kill them with equal indifference. We survive, he said, same as always. But survival had changed shape, become something shared, something worth protecting. Outside, the first snow began to fall. soft flakes that would cover their tracks, hide their secrets under winter's quiet blanket. For now, truth changed the air between them, made it thinner, easier to breathe but harder to hide in. Snow fell for 3 days, blanketed the mountain in silence white as bone. Elamie and Abner moved around each other with new awareness. Shared burdens had weight, required different balance. She found him standing guard at dawn, coffee steaming in his hands, eyes fixed on the trail that wound down through snow-heavy pines. See anything? Tracks, horse prints, day old maybe too. The coffee grew cold in his grip. Elamie took the cup, felt his fingers reluctant to let go. Contact had become precious, measured in heartbeats, close, close enough. They spent the morning preparing, cleaned weapons with ritual care, counted ammunition, made plans that tasted bitter as medicine. If riders came, Elamie would take the mare, follow the creek bed north until it joined the river. Abner would delay pursuit, give her time to disappear into wilderness that swallowed people whole. Neither spoke of what delay might cost him. That afternoon she helped him check the mining equipment. Silver still glinted in the creek despite early ice, wealth that meant nothing if they weren't alive to spend it. Could leave it all, she said. Abner panned another scoop of gravel, metal sang against metal, the sound of hope refusing to die. Could, won't. Why? He held up a nugget no bigger than a child's tooth. It caught sunlight, threw it back in fragments. This mountain gave me peace, gave me you. Don't abandon what matters. The words settled between them gentle as snowfall. Elamie felt something shift inside her chest, recognition perhaps, or the dangerous stirring of feelings deeper than survival. Evening brought them closer to the fire. Wood burned low. Heat gathered in the space between their chairs. She mended his shirts while he carved. 2 people making small acts of faith in tomorrow. Her thread snagged on rough cloth. She bit it free, tasted blood where it cut her lip. Abner looked up from his work, set down knife and wood without words, rose from his chair with movements careful as prayer. He knelt beside her, thumb gentle against her injured lip, wiped away the single drop of blood that had gathered there. Neither moved, neither breathed. The fire crackled. Wind pressed against the cabin walls. The mountain held them in cupped hands while something unnamed passed between them. Elamie, her name in his voice carried weight, question and statement both. She leaned forward, closed the distance between breath and intention. Their lips met soft as moth wings, tentative as dawn touching mountaintops. The kiss lasted heartbeats, ended when she pulled back, not from fear but from the magnitude of what it meant. We shouldn't. No, he agreed. We shouldn't. But his hand remained gentle against her face, thumb tracing the line of her cheek with reverence reserved for precious things. The next morning brought visitors. Hoofbeats on frozen ground announced them. 3 riders picking their way up the mountain trail, breath steaming from horses' nostrils, metal jingling soft as wind chimes. Elamie watched from the window, counted weapons, memorized faces. The lead rider wore a deputy's badge that caught morning light. Federal Marshal, Abner said. His voice held the flat calm of men who had faced death before. Clayton Briggs. The others are hired guns. She retreated to the back room, gathered her few possessions with hands that did not shake. If running became necessary, she would be ready. The knock came firm but not aggressive. Professional courtesy before professional violence. Abner opened the door. Cold air rushed in, carried the scent of horse sweat and determination. Marshal Briggs. His voice gave nothing away. Long way up the mountain. Mr. Stone. The marshal stepped inside without invitation. His companions remained mounted, hands near weapons, looking for someone. Briggs was a lean man with eyes pale as winter sky. He studied the cabin with practiced attention, noted the extra coffee cup, the feminine touches that spoke of recent changes. Heard you took a wife. Man gets lonely. Sure does. Briggs walked to the fireplace, held his hands to the flames. Mind if I meet her? The request carried weight. Refusal would bring suspicion. Compliance might bring recognition. Elamie, Abner called. She emerged from the back room, moved with dignity that masked the terror clawing at her chest. The marshal studied her face, compared it to memory or drawing. "Ma'am," he touched his hat brim. "Congratulations on your marriage." "Thank you." The politeness felt sharp as broken glass, dangerous to handle. "Peculiar thing," Briggs continued. "Been tracking a woman, stole from her former employer. Description matches you pretty close." Elamy met his gaze without flinching. "Lot of women look similar." "True enough." He smiled without warmth. "This particular woman had help, man in uniform. Military type." Abner's hand drifted toward his gun belt, the movement small but decisive. "You military, Mr. Stone?" "Was, long time ago." "Buffalo Soldiers?" The question hung in the air, loaded as a cocked pistol. Outside, one of the horses stamped restlessly. Leather creaked as riders shifted weight. "Among others." Briggs nodded, moved away from the fire toward the door. His inspection was complete, conclusions drawn. "Well, I'll leave you folks alone. Enjoy your honeymoon." He paused at the threshold, looked back with eyes that held knowledge sharp as winter wind. "Storm coming, big one, might be trapped up here for weeks." The door closed behind him. Hoofbeats faded down the mountain trail, but the threat remained, settled over the cabin heavy as storm clouds. Elamy sank into her chair, hands finally free to tremble. "He knows." "Knows some, suspects more." Abner checked the rifle. Counted shells with mechanical precision. A soldier's habits died hard. "Why didn't he arrest us?" "Waiting for something, someone." The answer chilled her more than winter wind. Marshal Briggs had not come to capture them. He had come to confirm their location, to make certain they would be here when the real trap closed. Snow began falling again, thick flakes that would soon make the mountain impassable. Beautiful white bars on a cage of their own choosing. They had perhaps days before the storm hit full force, days before riders returned with warrants or worse, days to decide whether love was worth dying for. The storm hit 2 days later. Wind screamed through the pines with voices of the damned. Snow fell sideways, turned the world into white nothing. Elamy woke to ice crystals on the cabin walls. The fire had burned low during the night. Her breath made clouds in the frigid air. Abner was gone. She found him outside splitting wood in the howling wind. Ice clung to his beard. His hands moved with mechanical precision despite the cold that would freeze flesh in minutes. "Come inside," she called over the storm. He looked up, eyes rimmed red from wind and sleeplessness. The axe never stopped moving. "Need fuel, storm might last a week." She grabbed his arm, felt muscle rigid with cold and determination. "Need you alive more than I need firewood." He stopped, let her lead him inside. She wrapped him in blankets, made coffee strong enough to wake the dead. His hands shook as he held the cup. "Can't lose you," she said. The words came without permission, truth spoken in the language of fear. Abner set down his coffee, pulled her close with arms that still trembled from cold. She fit against him perfect as key in lock. Two broken pieces making something whole. "Won't lose me, promise." They held each other while the storm raged, made silent vows against the violence outside. Love born in desperation had its own fierce strength. On the third day the wind died. Snow continued falling, but gentler now. The mountains settled into winter sleep. That evening brought another knock at the door. Elamy reached for the rifle. Abner motioned her to the back room. But the knock came again, weaker this time, desperate. "Help!" The voice was muffled by wind and exhaustion. "Please." Abner cracked the door. A man stood in the snow, hatless, coat torn. Ice crusted his mustache. He swayed on his feet. "Marshal Briggs." "Storm caught me," he gasped. "Horse went lame, been walking 2 days." Abner hesitated. Enemy or not, no man deserved to freeze. Mountain law ran deeper than personal grudges. He opened the door. Briggs stumbled inside, collapsed in the chair by the fire. His lips were blue, fingers white with frostbite. Death had been walking beside him. Elamy emerged from the back room, brought blankets, hot coffee. Whatever else divided them, basic humanity demanded mercy. "Thank you," Briggs whispered. They tended him in silence, warmed his hands, fed him soup, saved the life of a man who had come to destroy theirs. Hours passed. Color returned to the marshal's face. Speech came easier. "Why?" he asked. "Why what?" Abner replied. "Why help me? You know what I am." Elami looked up from mending his torn coat. Needle paused in careful stitches. "Know what you think you are. Maybe that ain't the whole truth." Briggs stared into the fire. Flames danced across features worn by years of hard decisions. When he spoke, his voice carried different weight. "Name's not really Briggs," he said. "Benjamin Rivers, Corporal Benjamin Rivers, 3rd Cavalry." The needle fell from Elami's fingers. Abner's coffee cup stopped halfway to his lips. "You served under me," Abner said quietly. "Yes, sir." "Sergeant Stone." Rivers straightened despite his exhaustion, old habits of respect, until Canyon Creek. The name hit Abner physical as a blow. Canyon Creek, where orders became atrocities, where good men chose between conscience and duty. "You were there." "Was there, saw what happened, saw you try to stop it." Rivers pulled his badge from his coat, set it on the table between them. "Saw you take a bullet for doing right." The fire crackled. Outside, wind moved through the pines with sound of distant weeping. "I ran too," Rivers continued. "Different direction, changed my name, became what I thought was law." Elami resumed her mending, stitches small and precise as prayers. "But the law that sent me here ain't justice. It's just Whitmore reaching from his grave." Abner leaned forward. "Whitmore's dead. Hart gave out last winter, but his influence lives on. His friends want the gold back, want examples made." The confession settled between them heavy as stone. 3 people bound by shared history, by wounds that refused to heal. "You came to arrest us." "Came to warn you." Rivers met Elami's eyes. "Whitmore's nephew is coming. Marcus Whitmore has federal backing, plenty of money for hired guns." Elami's thread snapped. The sound sharp in the quiet cabin. "When?" "Soon as the storm breaks, week maybe, 2 at most." The marshal badge lay on the table, brass catching firelight, symbol of authority that had become burden. "What do you propose?" Abner asked. Rivers reached into his coat, pulled out folded papers, official documents with wax seals. "Whitmore kept records, every crooked deal, every man he destroyed, been collecting evidence for months." He spread the papers on the table. Names, dates, details of corruption that reached from Texas to Washington. "This could bring down a dozen men, but I need witnesses, people who lived through what he did." Elami studied the documents. Saw Tommy's death reduced to numbers in a ledger, property damage listed beside human lives. "Dangerous game," she said, "more dangerous to keep running." Rivers refolded the papers. "He's got too much reach, too many friends. We'll never stop hunting you." The storm outside began to ease. Snow fell lighter. The mountain released its held breath. "What's the plan?" Abner asked. Rivers smiled for the first time since arriving. The expression transformed his weathered face. "Make them come to us, on our terms, on ground we choose." He gestured toward the papers, toward evidence that could free them or damn them all. "Your mining claim. Marcus Whitmore thinks you found something big up here. Thinks that's why you won't leave." Understanding dawned in Abner's eyes. "Let him think he's right. Send word through the right channels. Let it slip that you struck a major vein. More silver than you can mine alone." Rivers leaned back in his chair, exhaustion and hope warring in his features. "Greed will bring him running, bring him within reach of justice." Elami set down her mending, looked between the 2 men who offered her a chance at something she had never dared imagine. Freedom, real freedom, not just survival. "It's a trap," she said. "Yes," Rivers agreed. "The question is, who's really caught in it?" Outside, the first stars appeared through breaking clouds. Mountain silence settled over them, gentle as benediction. 3 fugitives planning justice by firelight. 3 broken people choosing to stand instead of run. The storm was ending. The real battle was about to begin. The trap was set within days. Word spread through careful channels. A mining claim rich beyond imagination. Silver veins thick as a man's arm. Whispers designed to travel fast and far. Rivers proved skillful at deception. He visited the saloons in Cedar Falls, bought drinks for loose-tongued prospectors, let slip details about Abner's sudden wealth, the mountain hermit who struck it rich. Greed moved faster than winter wind. Marcus Whitmore arrived with the spring thaw. 6 men rode with him, hard faces under expensive hats, guns that spoke of serious intention. LME watched them approach from the cabin window. Her husband's nephew carried the same cruel mouth, the same pale eyes that saw people as property. "He looks like him," she said. Abner checked his rifle for the 3rd time. "Acts like him too." Rivers had positioned himself downstream, hidden among the willows where the creek bent toward the valley. A recording device borrowed from federal marshals waited in his saddlebags. Evidence machine that would capture every word. The plan was simple. Let Marcus talk. Let greed expose the corruption beneath his federal authority. Then spring the trap with justice instead of violence. Simple plans rarely survived contact with evil men. Marcus dismounted near the creek. His companions spread out with military precision, professional killers who understood their business. "Mr. Stone," Marcus called. His voice carried the cultured accent of Eastern schools, education wasted on a poisoned heart. "I believe we have business to discuss." Abner emerged from the cabin. LME stayed inside but near the window, rifle loaded and ready. "Don't recall sending for company," Marcus smiled. The expression held Winter's warmth. "My late uncle had dealings in this territory, unfinished business regarding stolen property." He gestured toward the cabin where LME waited. "That woman belongs to me now, along with whatever she took." The words fell into mountain silence heavy as stones. Belonged, as if human souls could be owned by signed papers. "My wife don't belong to nobody but herself." "Your wife," Marcus laughed. The sound echoed off stone walls sharp as breaking glass. "Marriage between your kind and hers ain't legal where I come from." Abner's hands grew still. The calm that preceded violence. "Legal enough here, perhaps, but theft is theft regardless of jurisdiction." Marcus nodded to his men. They moved closer with casual menace. "However, I'm a reasonable man. Return what was stolen. Surrender the woman. I might let you keep some of this silver I hear about." The offer hung in the air, poisonous as snake bite, corruption dressed in civilized language. "And if I refuse?" Marcus drew his gun with practiced ease. His men followed suit, 6 weapons against 1 man standing in creekside sunlight. "Then I'll take it all anyway." The confession carried across the water. Rivers heard every word through the recording horn. Evidence of conspiracy. Threats made under color of federal law, but evidence meant nothing if they were all dead. "One problem with your plan," Abner said. "What's that?" "You're standing in the wrong place." The cabin door opened. LME stepped out with rifle raised. Behind Marcus, Rivers emerged from the willows, gun drawn, badge gleaming in afternoon light. "Federal Marshal Benjamin Rivers, you're all under arrest." The tableau held for heartbeats. 7 armed men frozen in lethal calculation. Who would move first? Who would die? Marcus broke the silence with laughter. Rivers should have known a deserter would surface eventually. Should have known a Whitmore would follow in family footsteps. The insult found its mark. Marcus raised his weapon toward the marshal. Abner moved first. Years of mountain living had made him quick as deer. He tackled Marcus around the waist. Both men fell into the creek with sounds of thunder. Gunfire erupted, brief, sharp, then silence. When the smoke cleared, 3 of Marcus's men lay groaning in creekside mud. The others had thrown down their weapons. Professional killers knew when odds turned against them. Marcus struggled to his feet, water streaming from expensive clothes, murder bright in his pale eyes. He reached for a hidden derringer, small gun meant for close work. LME's rifle spoke once. The derringer flew from Marcus's hand, disappeared into mountain current that would carry it miles downstream. "Next shot won't be so generous," she said. Rivers gathered the evidence he needed. Confessions recorded on wax cylinders, witnesses to federal corruption, documents that would topple men in distant offices. Marcus Whitmore was finished. His hired guns faced prison. The conspiracy that had hunted them across territories crumbled to dust. 3 months later, papers arrived from Washington. Full pardons, official recognition of their marriage, freedom stamped with government seals. Ellamy found Abner by the creek where it all began. Silver still glinted in shallow water, wealth enough for simple happiness. "What now?" she asked. He took her hand, calloused fingers gentle against her palm. "Now we live." The mountains spread around them in summer glory, pine scent thick as perfume, birds calling from branches heavy with new growth. They had survived winter, survived worse than winter, found love in the space between desperation and hope. A new traveler appeared on the trail that afternoon, young woman with haunted eyes, worn dress, empty stomach. Ellamy met her at the cabin door, offered food without questions, shelter without conditions. Some gifts were meant to be passed forward. Abner welcomed the stranger with quiet dignity, made space at their table, extended the sanctuary they had found in each other. The mountain held them all, kept their secrets, offered peace to broken souls seeking redemption. Spring moved toward summer. Life moved toward whatever came next. But for now, in this moment, surrounded by peaks that touched heaven, they had enough. Love, safety, purpose. The simple riches that mattered most. And that is all to the story for now. Please let me know where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will create a story there. Consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel. And if you enjoy our content, click this video on your screen. I promise you it's worth watching. See you tomorrow.